Well, greetings one and all, and welcome back to another video here with your host Andrew. Today what we're going to be doing is having a look at the pen in here, which is the Good Blue, which is a new company here in the UK. So let's roll the titles and see what we have. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, so the Good Blue. Now before we get on with the rest of the video, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background to how I found out about this company. About a month and a bit ago, I was browsing my Instagram stories on, well, Instagram, and I was looking at Ben Walsh's, aka Graphitas Pens, stories, and he had promoted on there the Good Blue fountain pen, and it really jumped out at me as a very clean aesthetic. So I reached out to the operator and said, would you like to have the pen reviewed? And long story short, he said yes. We talked a little bit on Instagram about the manufacturing processes and how he's come up with this pen. And there's a few interesting things about this pen. One, it's all made in England, bar the nib, but there's been some special treatments done to the nib to make it a little bit more interesting than the usual can write nibs. Now, I do have quite a lot of feedback about this pen, both positive and some points of constructive criticism, so stay tuned to that later on. But I think, to be honest, it's really exciting to see another English company springing up to actually make a fountain pen. We don't really have a huge amount of manufacturers anymore in this country, and it's just always nice and refreshing to see a rebirth of a lovely little pen. Now, do excuse the inky fingers today. I had to tighten up the feed on the pen. But anyway, I digress. So, onto the pen itself. We've got this cigar-shaped pen with a facet which is cut out on the bottom. And that's really practical. It does really allow for you to be able to put this onto a table and not have the fear of it running off the table. Now, of course, you could put it into a pen holder, a pen rest, and then obviously that would solve your problems. But if you don't have one of those handy, then it's always nice to have a little bit of a cutout just to be able to give you that peace of mind that your precious pen won't fall off the table. Okay, the actual design is, we've got this sort of almost reflected design here of the top and the bottom, and the cap and the barrel aren't too dissimilar in shape. Now, this could be a good or bad thing, and I'll talk a bit more about that later on. So let's just take off the cap a moment. Underneath the cap, we have got a can write nib on a ebonite feed, and very nicely engraved on there is, we have got a little bit of gubbins about the pen, which I believe says, "For the love of flex." Isn't that just beautiful? A little bit poetic. Okay, and then we've got a brass section with a massive step up onto a knurled center section. Now, what's quite interesting about this is that if I undo the barrel, it undoes from the opposite side. Now, normally when you undo a barrel on a pen, you take off the cap and then you take off the barrel. For whatever reason, on here, it is split into two different sections. Now, this is obviously a very conscientious design, and actually one which is not too bad. There are some points which I'd like to say about this later on, but I will reserve that for what I think and feel about this pen. And then we have on the actual section here, the Good Blue, just written down on the actual section itself. So very attractive. Now, this being brass, it is going to attract a little bit of patina, and it's already started to patina in my sort of very limited use. This can be something which people love, and it can be something which drives people mad. So again, if I remember, I will talk about the things which I potentially would improve about this pen later on in the video. Okay, so as I was demonstrating before, we do have a barrel which does unscrew, and what is really welcomed is that it does actually unscrew with some real nice precision, and there's no scratching on the actual metal on metal, which you can get, and it's very quick to take off. Every time you actually re-post or re-screw on the barrel, it matches up with the facet, and the same with the cap. and it doesn't take a huge amount of turns to actually do it, which is really pleasant. Then, of course, we have got the international cartridge converter in here. And let's just talk a little bit more about those materials. So this pen is a blue anodized aluminium, and it's got a really nice coating on here, which stops any scratches. So I believe it's PVD coated. And then we've got this knurled brass section in the middle here. Very nice. It's something a little bit different. For those which don't like patina, it could be a nightmare to clean, but I've not tried attempting to clean it. And that's pretty much it in terms of the pen. Now let's just talk about the case in which the pen comes. So in the case, I got a spare nib and feed, which was a plastic one. I've tried both versions, and the ebonite version is better. So if you are thinking about getting this, yeah, go for the ebonite version. And then we've got this really nice recycled wool in here, which is compacted, and I just think it's something a little bit different, very conscientious in terms of the environment. Nice to see some recycling. And then we just got this lovely tin box, which again is fantastic. There's no documentations which came with mine. I can't say whether or not production versions would actually come with that. And there is no logos or anything on the actual tin. It would be quite nice maybe if there was some. Anyway, let's move on to doing a writing sample, size comparison, and then I'll give my thoughts and feelings at the end. Right then, ladies and gentlemen, so we have got the good blue. We've got a Canwright steel nib. Okay, and what's quite interesting about this is that the Good Blue has invested quite a lot of time and energy in terms of actually modifying this. This doesn't write like any other Canwright nib which I've used, in that this is actually a lot more stiff. You do have to exert quite a lot of pressure with this, and you will see that in a moment. So let's just write out the ink. Now, for the sake of this pen, I've used a relatively lubricated ink, and that is Diamine Oxblood. Wonderful. Okay, now let's move up and write out the quick brown fox. Wonderful. It's a very smooth writer, extremely fine line as you can tell, and yeah, has no problems with regular writing whatsoever. Okay, so I think what you guys are really here to see is how well this pen flexes. Now, I've had a lot of experience with this pen, both positive and negative. I will talk a bit more about this later on, but the pen does flex. And you can get quite a nice line, although it does have a tendency at times, like here, to railroad, as demonstrated here. Now, when you go a little bit slower, it seems okay. but you do have to exert quite a lot of pressure. I would say that if you have fast writing and you're after a pen which flexes with fast writing, don't even consider it. And just partly because I just don't think this is going to match your writing style. That's nothing to say there's anything bad about the pen. There isn't. It's just that it's not going to actually suit your writing needs. Anyway, let's just write out a... Now, what I do like about this is that the actual snapback is pretty decent on here. And in terms of wetness, it's pretty good. So let's just do a couple of tests. It's not too bad at all. So the flow doesn't seem to have an issue. It's just at times you do get a little bit of railroading. But if you do prime the feed and you take your time, you can have quite a pleasant experience with this nib. But just be forewarned, it's not necessarily a pen at this moment in time which is going to give you, I would say, like the really massive experiences which you may have seen from other CanWrite nibs, where you get like almost like a 2mm line, but you can get some nice expressions at times. But then you do get sometimes when it just railroads, and then it just starts going again, and it seems to be okay, and then it railroads. So it's just unfortunately a little bit inconsistent at this moment. But I think this pen certainly is on the right tracks for, you know, being a pen which will potentially offer you a fantastic writing experience with flex down the line. Now, this pen does come in a variety of different nib sizes, and I'll talk about that later. So that's the writing sample. Oh, hang on. Let's see if we can do a bit of reverse. Yeah, so we can do some reverse writing, although it is a little bit scratchy, and you do get like a triple extra fine line. So for art purposes, not too bad. I mean, I could do quite nice little illustrations with this. Now, I used to do quite a lot of drawing on the channel, but unfortunately it took up a lot of time in terms of editing, and I just don't have the luxury of that time anymore. But rest assured, I will have some more drawings coming on the channel soon. Anyway, let's move on to doing a size comparison next. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, from left to right, we have got the Wet n Wise Comfort, which has had a treatment of Urushi lacquer from Michael from Tamanuri Studios. Then we've got the Good Blue limited edition in blue. Then we've got a Eboya, which has had some treatment of Urushi from Bokamondu. And then we've got another Urushi pen here. Now, these are all Urushi pens, but they're all clipless. So I thought it would be fun just to actually compare some clipless pens together, and I don't actually have a clipless pen which is in a standard acrylic. So then, yeah, so at the end we've got a Nakaya Piccolo, and that one is in the Midori Tamanuri finish. So it's quite a long pen, and it's certainly very comparable in size to the Eboya, which is the medium size. So it's not an oversized pen, but it does have quite an oversized appearance due to it being just a fraction longer. Okay, so let's get these uncapped, and then we'll have a look at them in comparison uncapped. As you can see immediately, actually, when you uncap these, having that inbuilt facet on the bottom is really useful, especially when doing these videos. I will get a pen tray at some stage. Okay, right. So the two pens here in the middle, which is the Good Blue and the Eboya, aren't too dissimilar in shape and size. The sections aren't too dissimilar. The only noticeable difference is that on the Good Blue, this section is a little bit shorter, and there is a more pronounced step up onto the main barrel. So It's a pretty decent sized pen, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that now in our final thoughts and feelings. Right, ladies and gentlemen, so my final thoughts on this pen. What do I like, what don't I like? Who's it for and who's it not for? Okay, so really conscientious decision on the recycling on the actual packaging. Fantastic. It really is a nicely presented pen, and something very cozy about having this compacted recycled wool. Very, very nice. Having your logo on here wouldn't be necessarily a bad idea. Just the good blue, just laser engraved in that beautiful font which you've got on the section, I feel would just put an icing on the cake. Just some format of care and instructions on the inside would be quite useful if that hasn't been done already. On to the pen itself. Okay, I'm going to talk about what I like, what I don't like, who's it for and who's it not for in an amalgamation today. So I'm going to talk about what I don't like and what I feel could be improved about the pen to start with and who it's not for. Okay, so let's take a look at this. You'll notice that immediately that, as I said before, the actual barrel and the cap aren't too dissimilar in length, which means that when you come to unscrew one of the sections, you might be unscrewing the nib section or the cap, or you might be unscrewing the barrel, which can be a little bit annoying. Fortunately, it doesn't take long to actually unscrew the barrel to put it back on, but some form of identification on here to indicate that this is the cap would be quite useful if you're going to keep this format. Maybe having the good blue imprinted with a roundel on the top would look particularly smart and would act as some form of indicator. But I do also appreciate the fact that I can quickly check the ink levels without having to unscrew the cap and then the actual barrel itself, which is what is quite usual on a lot of other pens. Okay, underneath we have got quite a big step up on the actual section to that of the barrel. You can hold it up here if you so wish. It does make it quite long from the actual section to the actual page, but you can do it, and I have done some drawing with this pen held like this, and it's not too discomforting. Holding it down on the section, I just wish the section was a few millimeters wider, just because of the step up is so pronounced from this quite thin section. Now for myself, I've not really experienced too much discomfort, but I can certainly say that someone with much bigger fingers than mine, which are quite small, they would find this particularly discomforting, I feel. So maybe making the section about 1 mil or 2 mils wider would certainly go a long way to actually making this pen a bit more comfortable to hold on the section itself. You can write certainly for shorter time spans with no problems whatsoever. The nib and feed, I really appreciate that they're going through the efforts of trying to make a flex nib fountain pen. It's not quite there yet. As you can see from the writing sample, it does have a tendency to railroad quite a lot, even with writing quite slow. This is not an issue which is isolated to the Good Blue. I have had this on a number of other pens as well. And for the life of me, I don't know why. I mean, I'm not a flex nib expert. I have spoken to a few people about this, about my findings, and some people have suggested maybe it's the length of the tines with the actual ebonite feed in this particular circumstance. And then there's the channels, which actually are really decently cut. I've looked at those and there's no problems whatsoever. The only other thing I can potentially think of is maybe that we are using a cartridge converted pen, and perhaps the aperture to let the ink come through isn't enough to actually allow the ink to come down the channels to cope with the actual flexing of the pen. I have no idea, but those are some speculations on to why that is the case. Having said that, if you do prime the feed, it does write really nicely. It is quite stiff for a flex nib pen, but it does give you that snapback, which is really, really important. It does mean that when you come up onto your ascenders of your letters, you're not going to end up with a massive pool of ink coming up, which is really nice. So I feel that they're making the right conscientious decisions in terms of the actual manufacturing of the pen nib. It is a can-write nib, but it is being modified by the Good Blue themselves. So it's an interesting development, and I think it's one which is going to only get better from this point. And it is a very smart looking pen. So let's now talk about the things which I like about the pen. Under normal writing situations, the pen is absolutely fantastic. It produces an extremely fine line, and as an artist, I really truly appreciate that. I've done some drawing with this pen, and it has no problems with keeping up under, as I say, regular writing. Having the reverse on here, which gives me that triple extra fine, gives me that finite detail to be able to do some fantastic artwork. So if you are an artist and you are looking to getting a relatively inexpensive pen and you want to support an English company, then definitely this is one which I would certainly consider. There's a nice weight to the pen, and it's just in general really nice. You can't post the pen. If you try to do so, it's just going to fall off. So that's a bit of a shame. It's not too small as a pen, so it does mean that you can actually write, pardon me, it does mean that you can write pretty decently without having to post it. Okay, next thing I really love about the pen is that no matter where you put the cap on, it screws on really quickly, and it always lines up with the facets on the bottom. Really, really nice that is. I have to say, I think that is one of my favourite features of the pen, as someone who's quite OCD about things lining up. So really, really impressive pen in terms of its construction. Really lovely machining. The PVD coating on this aluminium is absolutely superb. You're not going to dent it. I've unfortunately dropped the cap on the floor in the recording of this video, which I didn't actually keep in because I don't want to give anyone a heart attack today with a pen which is on loan. But yeah, it really is a absolutely fantastic pen. No dents, really tough coating. The knurling on the center section here is really nicely machined, and yeah, I think they're definitely onto a winner with this pen. Overall, I certainly recommend the pen, but there are a few things which might be sort of points of consideration before purchasing. And just to summarize that, really big step up on the section. Maybe a slightly wider section would be a bit more comfortable. If you're intending this to be a flex nib fountain pen, be prepared to have to prime the feed currently. Hopefully that the feedback which I've given the Good Blue will be taken into consideration in the future, and hopefully we'll have a flex nib which rivals that of pens which would have cost you hundreds and hundreds of pounds in the past. Honestly, I feel that the passion behind the company is absolutely fantastic. I definitely think there is a winner on their hands. In this version, it's not quite there yet, but I can certainly see this being a pen which I would certainly purchase in the future, maybe in version 2. And let's face it, most pens go through reiterations. Leonardo didn't have the best track record in the beginning. In fact, a lot of manufacturers haven't. So these are like the trials and tribulations of anyone who's starting into making a fountain pen for the masses. So thank you for listening to my rambles once again. If you've got any questions about the pen, feel free to ask them in the comments. I would certainly recommend checking out the pen, and certainly at the price point. If you've got smaller hands and you are after something for, you know, a regular writing experience, then yes, I'd certainly recommend the pen. If it's for flex, maybe just be prepared, as I say, for having to prime that feed. If you're happy to do so, then definitely buy this pen. Now, I will remind you that the blue version is sold out. I don't know whether there will be another run of them at all. I would imagine, being a limited edition, there probably wouldn't be, not in this blue at least. But there is the black version, which is available on the website, and it does come with a variety of different nibs. You can get a medium, you can get a fine flex, and you can get that in 2 variants. You can get it with a plastic feed, which I just wouldn't touch with a barge pole, and you can get it with an ebonite feed. So that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's content. If you did, please do consider giving it a like, and then I shall see you in the next video. Till then, stay safe and goodbye for now. Both myself and reach out to the Good Blue. I think they really are onto a winner here, and hopefully with enough feedback, it will provide a much better understanding for the Good Blue to move forwards. So thank you for listening today, and stay tuned for another video next week. Till then, stay safe and goodbye for now.